Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is November the 8th, 2019. Strong hand. Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. In motion. Bitcoin is the apex predator. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. I'm offended by selling conviction. And we've got two guys here that got a lot of conviction. They are unique beasts. They are relentless. Oh yeah, David Bennett is coming in. He's got his podcast, Bitcoin and ... And then we got Leo Weiss. He's coming in from freaking Hong Kong. Okay. Now I want to move to the mainland of China because there's been a lot of news out of there lately, a lot of Bitcoin related news. Are they going to create their own cryptocurrency news, their own cryptocurrency, their own centralized coin? They're going to have their own Libra. Who knows? What's going on over there, Leo? What's going on with those
I'm a little bit surprised and confused about that as well. So first, I was surprised over the last half year, maybe the last year, how much attention Libra has been getting from US regulators, from US media, about what they're building. Yeah, that attention was partly negative, right? That attention was a pushback of like, you're challenging our authority, you're challenging the status of the US dollar. But this, only about like in May, June, suddenly this, concerns were like swapping over to Asia. And for me, like somebody who's rooted mainly in the Bitcoin community, this has been part of a much longer discussion of like the viability of stablecoins. And I considered this discussion to be more or less like over, right? We've had all these arguments. We've just debated all the pros and cons. But suddenly all of Asia was discussing not just the opportunities, but mainly the threats of something like Libra. And I feel like this is a discussion that's been pushed on, especially China. Like if you look at the People's Bank of China, it's been mainly them reacting to journalists, to businesses, to like the local like finance community, like pushing them like, what are we going to do about Libra? And that's not so much rooted in the fear of like, if Facebook had announced they're going to start a payment system, a global payment system, nobody would have paid attention. But if they say we're going to start a global blockchain payment system similar to Bitcoin, then suddenly everybody pays attention. Like there's this weird connection of, first of all, nobody of course understands like really what the technology is and what these value propositions mean. But what people do understand is that Bitcoin is not very widely used, and yet it is potentially harmful because it has these properties. And then on the other side, you have something like Facebook, which doesn't have a currency, but everybody uses. And so in people's minds, they combine those things and they see a Bitcoin that everybody uses. They don't really see like exactly the properties of Libra. They see a Bitcoin that everybody uses. And they fear that this now makes their capital controls irrelevant. It makes their local currency redundant. It makes their monetary policy irrelevant. And they get these constant questions that they have to do something about it, even though some of these people in these organizations might not believe in it or might not think it's viable, or some of these people might actually understand what's going on and think this is complete nonsense and this is like too much hype about nothing. But they have to now respond. And they come up with this idea of like a central bank issued cryptocurrency, which to a cryptocurrency enthusiast, like doesn't sound like much. To an economist, sounds like an interesting attempt to remove the banks from the equation, remove the money creation inside of banks, right? The marginal reserve from banks, but nobody really knows like the details. So all that people seem to be concerned about is creating either some kind of alternative or some kind of legal framework that makes Libra irrelevant and satisfying their local press or their local finance industry that everything is going to remain the same, just 3% better.
All right. So where does well, David, I want to hear your take on, before we move to China real quick. What's your take on the Libra then?
My stance hasn't changed all that much. I think we're seeing reactionary events here in the United States, and that's from things like Facebook coming up with the idea of Libra. We know it's not probably going to be a blockchain. I read something that was laughable yesterday that said, oh, well, it was like their CTO or one of their CEOs said something like, or the COO, I think, says something around the term of, we are never going to link your financial transactions with your Facebook identity. And I'm like, no, that's not true. That will happen. And it with all the stuff that's coming out, it seems like even over here in the United States, we're grasping, or not I know what I'm clinging on to, but everything else seems to be clinging on to this grasping at straws, and everybody's changing the game of straws. There's nowhere that they can actually step anymore that has a solid foundation that they're familiar with. Now, we can walk across these moving stones in the air and we're completely fine, because at this point, we're used to massive shifts in ideas and what Bitcoin is or what Bitcoin was, or now we're into second layer stuff with Lightning. We're used to navigating this stuff, but people that have the regulatory mindset are locked in prisons. And because of that, their faltering will be pretty much epic, in my opinion. I don't think that the Chinese stablecoin is going to be blockchain based. I don't think Libra is going to be blockchain based. I think they're going to be, all of this is going to be centralized. And now we have this story that Zuko, I was talking to you about it last night, that Zuko tweeted out from Fortune magazine. This was Brian Brooks writing on November the 4th. The time has come for a tokenized version of the dollar. And then we saw a story, I reported on a story yesterday out of CoinDesk, I think, and it was talking about how the EU wanted their own. And then the EU came, or some spokesperson from the EU came back and said, no, that story was wrong. We just want to regulate. Well, I look at all this together and I just see a whole bunch of people running around and they don't really know what's going on. And because of that, probably naive, but it seems to me like it's easy targets.
Well, I say let them all run around and not know what's going on. If they want to create their own centralized cryptocurrencies, be my guest. And clearly the countries themselves are a little worried about a corporation printing its own money. They're clearly not fans of that, whether it be China or whether it be the United States. I'm a fan of it. I'm like, yeah, let them do it. I'm just going to stick with Bitcoin. I'm going to stick with the decentralized one. Now, so part of the deal that's coming out of China is clearly they want to beat Facebook to the punch, but perhaps with their own stable coin. But more so, Leo, they want to use cryptocurrency. They want to use blockchain to monitor their people, right? I mean, this is part of a larger central planning type of endeavor, I would assume, on their part.
Yeah, I was very much surprised when Xi Jinping, the chairman of the Communist Party of China, was making Bitcoin, or rather blockchain plus, as he called it, like a central policy objective for the next few years. I didn't expect this because very few of technology, especially technology topics, are being discussed at the top. The internet is one of these examples, and artificial intelligence is one of these examples. And for blockchain suddenly to achieve this level of recognition, to be up there with the internet and artificial intelligence, is very, very symbolic. And it is going to change a lot of how mining operations, of how cryptocurrency exchanges, of how tokens are going to be perceived in the next years. And I do think it can be seen as a bit of a turnaround from the 2017 ICO ban and from the 2018 harassment of mining operations. And that a lot of this stuff, even though the government doesn't specifically say it, is now going to be a lot more acceptable. But I don't know exactly whether this is like very well thought through and what this is exactly trying to achieve, because I am convinced that the party is only after control. They want to control their economy, they want to control their society, and they're terrified of their own people. Like, they're much more terrified of their own people than they are of like the largest military powers in the world. Like, they do not spend that much effort of defending themselves against potential military aggressors as they are defending themselves against like potential local fringe groups turning into political organizations. And so when they say blockchain, they must mean control, and they must mean surveillance. And it is very easy to imagine how they can come up with a new system that kind of like, yeah, puts these two together. For example, if we think about how the current financial system of China works, you have the Central Bank of China, you have the commercial banks around it, which are like predominantly state-owned. But state-owned means some of them are centrally, like federal state-owned, as we call in the US, or some of them are provincially state-owned. And then you have the tech companies. And the tech companies like Tencent and Alibaba, of course, they're all on board with like the Communist Party agenda, and none of them would ever like conflict with their vision. But they are still different power centers, and they still hold different information. And we've had instances, for example, where Tencent and Alibaba have refused to give up loan information to the government, saying that this is like their proprietary data and they're not going to share that with the government. So we have seen a bit of that, a bit of that defiance, and creating some kind of national blockchain currency would allow the central bank to take on the entire population and allow them to onboard as individual account holders. And then you're no longer going to hold your money with Alibaba, and your accounts on Alipay are no longer going to be like Alipay to Alipay, but rather every payment you'll do is going to be between different accounts on your central bank balance sheets. And all that Alibaba and Tencent and the local banks are going to do is provide you apps similar to like Bitcoin wallets that are only like a user interface to a commonly shared payment system, to which the government has perfect insight. They know at all times what is being bought, who holds what money, who transfers money to who sends a bribe to who, and there's not really any way of escaping, right? Because the second that this becomes possible, the desire to abolish cash is going to be, very high, and they are going to find technical solutions to allow even people in rural places, even people who don't have like a large income, and even tourists who just always use this digital cash. No physical cash allowed anymore.
Oh well, so this is this is the future, and this is the direction they're going in. And so many people were very pleased, you know. Oh, China likes Bitcoin again. Well, China likes blockchain, but I mean,
no, they're not.
It's a darker side.
They're not going to be excited about that. That's not what they mean. Like, the fact that Bitcoin rallied so much in that day was probably as much a surprise to them as it was to us.
Oh, very good. Very interesting point there. Pound that like button. They weren't. You said you don't think they exactly know what they're doing. Do you think there are officials in the Communist Party that are stocking up on Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think a lot of them would have some kind of Bitcoin exposure. That's not necessarily a sign that Bitcoin helps the Communist Party retain its power, and more of a sign that a lot of its members are looking for exits as well. And a lot of its members do not believe in that system either. And these people are holding gold in their personal vault as much as they're holding foreign real estate in like some Dakota LLCs, you know? Yeah. These people are not ideologically as aligned with the Communist Party as we think. Like, a lot of them are in it for the quick buck. and they're looking for ways to carry out their loot, and Bitcoin is very much an option for that.
Yeah, it's insurance just in case everything goes wrong. And well, it goes back to your point that the government fears the people more than they fear invading army. So I mean, they all have it in their back of their heads that it could fall apart at any moment, I guess.
Everybody just knows that like the other faction might turn against them any second, and that's why they stash their wealth abroad. That's why they have one foot out of the door. That's why they make sure that their offspring is educated abroad and has green cards, and eventually, in case something goes wrong, has the ability to like pull them in.
Yeah, very, very good point. They know what's going on. All right, so let's move on. I'm going to ask you about you just came from a Hong Kong meetup. We'll get to that in a second. I wanted to ask David a question though. About DeFi. Dude, I on Twitter now, it seems like there are all these people, DeFi, Ethereum. It's the biggest thing, and I'm not a fan of it, but I am not blind to this. There's a lot of money flowing into that. There really is a lot of money. A lot of companies tossing money into this. Do you have any thoughts on this, David? Do you hear about this too?
ICO 2.0.
That's what okay. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't looked in. I should probably look deeper into DeFi, but honestly, Adam, I can't muster the energy because I haven't been here since the beginning. I've been here about, I don't know, half the lifetime of Bitcoin, maybe getting close, I guess. And I've seen this exact type of sentiment so many times, and I've seen it catch on fire so fast so many times that I'm kind of numb. So when the whole DeFi conversation started, coming out, I'm looking at a Forbes article right now that was written back in April of this year. Why everyone in crypto is talking about DeFi. I'm like, I don't care. Because why was everybody talking about altcoins? Because they thought they were going to get smoking rich, and then they got wrecked. Why was everybody talking about ICOs? Same deal. I don't see this as very much different. So that's why I try, Adam. I try to care about some things, but some things I just can't.
I understand where you're coming from. I think there's going to be a lot. I think calling it ICO 2.0 is probably a good call right there. There are going to be a lot of people that are blindly piling into it. Now, there might be some good innovation that comes out of it. I think with the ICOs, there was even some, I think one day that we shouldn't rely on stock markets, that any company should be able to offer stock that way. But it turned into a disaster, but it brought a lot of money into the space. So I see a similar thing happening.
Well, and there was a change of sentiment. I think it's Robinhood now that either has already launched or is planning to launch the ability for your average Joe to buy 1/5 of one share of stock of, I don't know, Ford or, like General Electric or something like that. Not that I would want any of those, but if that's all it did was to allow people to be able to throw $100 at a stock, whereas before, if the stock costs more than $100, you're not touching it. Then I'm not as bad with that, except for the fact that I'm not a fan of the stock market casino either. I mean, I got like Lyft and Uber, and when they first hit the stock market, did their IPO, and they were first valuated at over $1 billion, and it was multiple billions of dollars. My question was, for what? Because most of the time when you're looking at a valuation of a company, you got to look at it from how much can I get for all the staplers on the desk when I liquefy this at auction. They don't own the cars. They don't own the pension funds of the people driving the cars for them. They probably rent server space. If I were to liquefy Uber today, I might get $100,000, $200,000 on office furniture. I might be, stuff like that. So I'm really wary of the valuations in the stock market across the board. So I'm not saying that the stock market is going to go down. I mean, I'm just saying that that's not my cup of tea. So loans, the whole DeFi thing leading to loans, because that's sort of like the first use case. The second use cases will be different, but the first use case, it concerns me because, and God, I hate to use the term unsophisticated investor or unsophisticated financial entity in the world, but it concerns me that people will rush out and get loans against Bitcoin or God, or Ether or whatever thing is going to come down the pipe, and get themselves into real trouble, because I don't like regulation, but I also don't like goons showing up at my door because, I've got, they over leveraged themselves. So they're mad because my Bitcoin on a price fall doesn't cover the loan that I took out 6 months earlier. To me, the whole thing just seems like it's a potential for a huge mess, which is, if people want to do that, that's fine. Let people do whatever they want to do. But it gives me the willies. That's all I'm saying.
Oh no, people are they're already wanting to do these loans and letting other people control their private keys, which is just a tremendous mistake. And we're going to talk about proof of keys in a second.
Yay, Jan 3rd.
Yeah, Leo, so you just came from a meetup there in Hong Kong. It was a Bitcoin meetup, but are people talking about DeFi there also, or what are they talking about at the meetup?
Today, I'd say the main topic was the Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission regulating cryptocurrency exchanges. But DeFi is very much a topic also in our like chat rooms, in our meetups, at our gatherings, at our events. It is also a contentious topic. Like, people very much see it as a pyramid scheme or as a Ponzi scheme. I personally see it more as like a way for Ethereum holders to leverage themselves, right? Like, people have Ether and they put that into DeFi, and then they somehow loan it out, and they take these stable coins and they buy more Ether, right? So it's a way for them to go long, to double go long. And that's of course going to go horribly wrong, and people are going to lose everything. And people are going to be margin called in the most nefarious of ways. But it's not, like, culturally wise, it's not like too different from what's happening in Bitcoin, where people are also very much willing to gamble away their holdings through highly leveraged futures exchanges. And yeah, I think DeFi is maybe a little bit more resistant to government influence. But if there's one thing that we learned this week from, like, the Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commissions, is that they don't seem to have the ability to regulate against futures exchanges either. Like, we did hear the chief executive of the Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission talk about Hong Kong cryptocurrency exchanges, and he was very concerned that some of the largest exchanges in the world are based here, or pretending to be based here, or pretending not to be based here while having their team here, and offering, like, a variety of risky products that people seem to very much like, but that he believes are, yeah, endangering the stability of some kind of financial system that is emerging. And he specifically put out a warning for traders and investors in futures contracts, because he believes this is, like, breaking the law and is going to get everybody wrecked, so to say. But the reason, probably, in my opinion, why he puts out an advisory rather than going out against these exchanges directly is that he doesn't have a strong legal case against them. These are very much profitable businesses, and they can afford their lawyers, and they have structured their businesses, sometimes from the very start, in a way that makes it difficult for regulators to touch them. And regulators find that terrifying. And regulators are begging governments to legislate against that, and to amend, in Hong Kong it's called the Securities and Futures Ordinance, and so to amend laws that restrict these kind of trading. But the government is busy with other things, right? We've discussed it at the beginning of the show. Like, the government has absolutely no political capital to legislate against something that the majority of the population does not give a crap about. So why risk, like, alienating even more allies when you can, like, safely ignore it, right? Like,
Yeah, you put it in. You definitely put it in the perspective there. There's bigger things to worry about over there now. So with the major takeaways, I guess, from the announcements in Hong Kong dealing with regulation or exchanges or whatever, is that life will go on as normal for Bitcoin holders there and such. There's not going to be any big. I mean, they want
Bitcoin holders very much unaffected. If you're owning Bitcoin in Hong Kong, if you're trading Bitcoin, if you're selling and buying Bitcoin as an OTC trader, like absolutely unaffected. If you're trading tokens that are similar to securities like ICOs or STOs, or if you're trading futures or derivatives, then as an investor, yeah, I mean, I can only tell you the same thing, right? Like you're gonna get wrecked eventually. But as a legal advisor, there's not that much like to worry about, other than that you have absolutely no legal protection whatsoever. As the operator of these exchanges, it is I think it is worth pointing out that Hong Kong is not a safe space. That I have seen a couple of entrepreneurs coming here thinking, oh, but you have all these like global players being based in Hong Kong. Obviously, this is an amazing place. That's not always the case. That sometimes has different reasons why they're here. That sometimes just is accidental or has like historical reasons, but it's not necessarily that Hong Kong is going to like shelter you and provide you with a beneficial regulatory environment.
At the gathering today, the meetup, or at recent ones, do people talk more about Bitcoin being a store of value more so than they used to, as a potential escape route out of the system, just in case they get out?
I think the political turmoil in Hong Kong has very much demonstrated to us that Hong Kong is not immune from chaos, and Hong Kong is not immune from like bank failure, and that the system is very much at risk. So people are actually talking less about that, right? People are talking about Bitcoin being a store of value when it comes to the hypothetical situation of your local government failing, of your local bank going bankrupt. When your local bank becoming bankrupt suddenly becomes like a widely accepted possibility, then people just recognize Bitcoin's ability to store value in that case and no longer debate it so much. So what people have been debating a bit today, and what we have been discussing a lot over the last few weeks, is how much can Bitcoin really become a global currency, as opposed to just being a global like store of value. And in my opinion, becoming a global currency is almost like a prerequisite to being a store of value. Like I do think the causality runs, I do think that being a store of value is like a prerequisite to being a global payment system. But being a global payment system is kind of this recursive prerequisite to this becoming a long-term store of value, right? So, but lots of people who disagree with me, right? Lots of people who believe that Bitcoin can survive purely as a store of value, can become like a digital gold, and doesn't really have to achieve being a payment system. But I believe that it kind of goes like this, right? You first need a currency that has the ability to store value, and people start to store value in it, but the store of value still competes with a lot of other possible store of values, some of which are completely ridiculous, right? Some of which might be artwork, or even things like metal, right, or aluminum, right, where people just say like whatever holds like purchasing value, I'm gonna buy it. And for Bitcoin then to actually succeed, for Bitcoin to then really kind of eat up that massive chunk of capital, it needs to have like some natural demand in the form of payments, and that people want to take it as a form of payment, where people might accept, when people might want to store their capital in a couple of tons of steel bars, or in real estate, or in the form of in the form of a business, they might not accept that as payment. But if people accept Bitcoin as payment on a large scale, then this system has the ability to grow like 100 times larger than it would as a store of value. And that really that's what recursively makes it possible to store value in it, that there's a natural demand for people to take payments in it.
Do you see it getting closer to being a payment system? Anyone working on innovation over there?
So 2 of my 3 beers that I paid for today were paid in Lightning. Not that I drank all of these 3 beers, but I did pay for all 3 of them, and both of the Lightning payments worked instantly. And I do think that's a pretty solid step to making this work. Because if we want to put all our payments on chain, we're not going to be able to do that for 100 million people of planet Earth. But with Lightning we can. And for maybe then from 100 million people going to 1 billion people or going to 10 billion people, we're going to need some additional ideas. But I'm also confident that we're going to be able to come up with that. And even if we can't, creating a global payment system for 100 million people is an extraordinary achievement.
David, your thoughts on this payment system, some big general themes here of Bitcoin we got into.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Leo. One of the things that I think about, because my background is in biological sciences, I can't help but to look at this entire situation as an organism. Bitcoin's place as an organ inside of the world, which is the general organism here. And when I look at, when people say Bitcoin's going to replace the banks, my first response used to be, hell yeah. And now it's like, no, it won't. It will be parallel. It will be like the lymphatic system of the human being. And then it'll be a second circulatory system. And then if one has trouble, then the other one kind of takes up slack. But having a parallel system also kind of, both the systems kind of inform each other that you kind of need to be on better behavior. I think Bitcoin will make banks behave better, not now, later. I don't know if I'll still be alive, because the ingrained, the really garbage things that especially central banks. I don't have a problem with my neighborhood bank. I have a problem with central banks. To me, there is actually a difference between the guy that gives you the home loan and the central bank that made the backing of that home loan ridiculously stupid. So the guy down the street's trying to help. He just happens to be giving me an instrument that may get me in trouble. And I don't blame him for that. I blame the people for designing the instrument. So as a parallel system, Bitcoin, and well, I'm just going to say Bitcoin, I think it will be able to take a lot of volume, especially with Lightning. I emptied my Tippin.me account into BottlePay just because I was playing with it. I made 15 transactions of 10,000 sats apiece within, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes of each other. Every single one of them was instant. None of them failed. There was no routing failures whatsoever. I look at Lightning. I look at Get Paid. I look at or Get Pay. I look at Fold. I look at like all these different systems. Oh God, all these different things where the Lightning Network. I just saw the other yesterday. I'll have it on the show tomorrow. Sphinx.com. Sphinx is a chat app that has payments built in, and it uses predominantly, or it uses only the Lightning Network to make those payments in the chat app. It's the spread of Lightning is like wildfire, man. And I think on-chain settlement would be good if you're buying a house. Buying a beer or 3, no, I don't want to settle on-chain for that. I don't need that. And I don't feel bad saying that either. It's a beer or a cup of coffee. I mean, I don't see like a steak sandwich. If I want to buy a side of beef to feed my family meat for like a year, I might consider on-chain payment for that. because, you know, you're gonna be pumping $1,600 or $800 depending on where you're at or what kind of beef you're buying. Right now, without atomic multipath payments, Lightning's not going to be able to handle that. But when we get AMP, the atomic multipath payments, we might be looking at being able to transact on Lightning at tens of thousands of dollars at a time. We just don't know yet. And that's my huge caution to everybody, is stop looking at what's going on right now and engaging the future against the tech that you see now, or the failures of tech that you see now. We don't know what's coming. Nobody saw Lightning on the horizon 7 years ago. And now look, what else is coming?
I like that attitude. Pound that like button, people. No one could have predicted that 7 years ago. You're absolutely right. And that's what I mean. All sorts of solutions, all sorts of creative minds working. Innovate. That innovation that's going on. We'll see. I am looking forward to the 2020s, the golden age here. Now, I want to pivot to something that's going to take place on January 3rd, 2020, actually. Proof of keys. Trace Mayer is talking about it again. He promoted it last year. Everybody get their Bitcoin off of exchanges or third parties on this by that day. See what happens. See if any exchange, who really has the Bitcoin that they say they do. Now, one little twist that he added theoretically, and which intrigued me, and I just want to hear your take on this, David. If someone out there creates an airdrop, a proof of keys airdrop coin that will really encourage people not to have their coins anywhere else but under their control on those days, on that day by January the 3rd. So they will receive this airdrop coin. Did you have any opinion on that, Dave?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at Trace's tweet. Let me just read it for your audience here. This was out of on November the 4th. Not really a fan of altcoins, but I do think a proof of keys coin could be fun, especially if its wallet had atomic swaps for Bitcoin built in. Would be best if it were an annual airdrop with a snapshot on each January the 4th. Then there would be cumulative economic effect. Thoughts, and then it's a poll. I voted a horrible idea. And again, allergic reaction to any kind of well, I don't want to say the full world coinery.
Yeah.
So you're I love Trace though. I mean, it's not like I'm think it's a horrible idea. It's just it's for me, it's a reaction of God, not one more coin. Yeah. You know, like as if we weren't in the weeds enough as it is. And I think a lot of people were taken aback that Trace, especially because of his history and especially because of his standpoint that being staunch on Bitcoin really messed people up. Now, after looking at it a little bit more, I still think that a coin being involved in this is a bad idea. However, the concept of being able to take a snapshot on January the 4th and somehow or another be able to, I don't know, I'm thinking, why can't we do this with, I don't know. Like I said, for a coin to work and have any kind of economic value or any kind of reason why we would want to do this, it would have to have economic value, which means we're right back into ICO land. Mm-hmm. And I don't like being in ICO land because it's almost impossible. Now that we've been in it for years, it's almost impossible to get out of it. It feels like a tar pit. And, you know, I'm trying to pull my feet out of it. I'm too lazy to even sell the Litecoin that I've got chilling out on a hardware wallet because, again, I so don't care anymore. I used to, but it's just become evident. Anyway, I love the concept of proof of keys. I think it's a great idea. I've never engaged in proof of keys because I don't keep my Bitcoin on anything but with my private keys. I am tempted, although I'm going to take that back because I do have some bottle pay stuff. You know, I might, because I can't settle on chain, or I'm not going to settle on chain with that because, you know, it might cost too much and it's not that many sats. I might make a gesture to proof of keys simply by moving all those sats off of bottle pay into some other Lightning app. just as a gesture. But the coin, I got to say it, I'm not a fan.
Okay. I do like how you say, though, part of your reaction is based on, it isn't exactly logic. It's just like you've got a very bad distaste for altcoins. You're just like, you hear about, oh, another coin. But at the same time, you're saying it would be great if somehow people could be financially incentivized to do this. So, I mean, I like the idea. I like it a lot because I know it's not him creating his own coin. He could just pick some dude that wants to do an altcoin. I mean, people are going to keep creating altcoins. Why not just pick one that does something kind of cool and say, hey, you're the one, do this, give it away for free every year. This will it will create a lot of publicity for the movement. I will tell you that.
Here's what I do wish. I wish Trace would really kind of like not buckle down, but sit down and write this up in a very fully fleshed as an idea instead of just a tweet that elicits reaction, because a tweet, you're not going to get much out of a tweet unless you put up a tweet storm. And if you're going to do that, especially on something like this, you know, a full length Medium post or something like that, Trace is a wonderful writer. You know, he's very skilled at it. And I would take the time to read that. That would be the only quote unquote white paper that I would actually read, just because it's coming out of Trace. And he's got a lot of traction for a long time in the space. So I can't imagine him like sitting there going, oh yes, he's got more money. He's probably got more money than God right now. So he doesn't really need it to be this way. So again, not a fan, but I would so read that paper. If he were to write that out and flesh it out completely, I would read that twice. I guarantee it.
That is an excellent point. Definitely a tweet is just going to cause people to give short little reactions, just like it was a short little tweet. I think he could flesh this out beautifully. I think, hey, Trace, if you're watching, you flesh that baby out. Don't. The tweet was a good way to introduce the idea, but bring it to the next level. And I think it'll be interesting. Leo, do you have thoughts on proof of keys?
I very much share David's sentiment. For proof of keys in the way that Trey Myers imagines it to work, it needs some kind of value, right? And I don't understand what gives this altcoin value. Like, who's going to buy this thing that was given to people purely as a value of like holding their own Bitcoin? And if it really has value, then I also see exchanges like kind of like starting to offer this as a service, right? It's kind of like kind of crediting people their airdrop coin in the same way as exchanges gave people access to their Bitcoin Cash or to their Bitcoin SV. And then again, the entire thing doesn't work if people are then relying on their exchanges and saying like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with like making sure that my Bitcoin are withdrawn to my own wallet at the right time, but like I'm just going to use the exchange that promises to do that for me, right? And so I don't really see it either working from the value side or working from the practical side. And I think people should like be very much reminded to, not trust their exchange. Like an exchange is like a little Forex office at the airport that you approach, and you're not going to leave your spot until you have gotten your change back, right? And you're not going to just like show up at a Forex booth and say, here's my US dollars, I'm gonna wait for my Korean won and just like pick them up whenever. I trust you guys. Like you're gonna get that cash right away. And I think that's how we should be looking at Bitcoin exchanges too. And that I don't really see a reason for why people put the Bitcoin in. And maybe we just need to remind our friends and our family that these are not, that Bitcoin is very much going to be around in 10 years, but their Bitcoin exchange might not be. And they're going to be able to save a lot of hassle and money by withdrawing the Bitcoin like right now. Like pause the show, log into your Bitcoin exchange, withdraw your coin, and then continue watching the show. Do it now.
Well, that is Trace's main point, to do exactly that. That is the whole point of the proof of keys movement. But he had a little spin on it there. And I will say this, the exchanges that are lying about the Bitcoin that they say they have, they won't be able to credit people their proof of key coin because they won't be able to get it. And that will help call them out as being liars. So I don't think it'll be as, you said it kind of defeats the purpose because all these, well, there will be legitimate exchanges that will offer that service to give the proof of key coins for, do it for their clients. But then some exchanges will not be able to do it because they don't actually have the Bitcoin. So it might help prove the point that these guys don't actually have the Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're getting here toward the end of the show here. I want everybody to give their conclusionary remarks, anything that was left out, any news you wanted to say. We'll start with David.
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on this idea that I got from Novak had tweeted out something. Let me see if I can't find it again. Yeah, Rodolfo Novak of CoinKite and the igniter of OpenDime and Cold Card and stuff like that. He had a tweet that was referencing another tweet. He said, now this would make an awesome hardware wallet. And what he's referencing is this handheld C64 or a Commodore HX64. It's a 3D rendering. And the thing is, it's not real. It's somebody decided that they would take all the visual elements of a Commodore 64 and turn it into this 3D model that had cassettes, like old tape cassettes that you would shove into it so that you could play old Commodore 64 games. Well, Noah Novak, in his penchant for older tech, it doesn't surprise me that he tweeted this out as to how this would make an awesome hardware wallet. Well, I kind of latched onto that and tweeted his tweet back out, and it says, it may not be the worst idea for a group of developers to go full on building Bitcoin on really old tech in conjunction with, and it would have to be this way, developers building on the very latest tech, looking forward into the future. And I end it with radio comes to mind. And I'm like a huge fan of this thing with, like, Rodolfo does it every once in a while, but some other people have gotten into it where they're transmitting transactions over ham radio, and somehow or another it gets picked up by a receiver, put on the mesh network, and at the end funnel of the mesh network is something that goes to the Blockstream satellite. And when I look at this, I'm like, oh my God, this is part of the whole deal of why I look at this whole space as an organism. It's growing organically, and it's scavenging whatever material it can from the earth, or in this case, the earth being our store of technology, old, present, future, that kind of thing. And I think that a steampunk Bitcoin would be an awesome way to go for some people who are able to, like, radio transactions. I like that idea because it's an ancillary system to, like, the general telecommunication systems. Eventually you're going to have to get to a miner for an on-chain thing, but a Lightning Network transmission can be done. I haven't seen it done, but it could be, it's not impossible for it to be on radio. And what I'm saying here is that a steampunk Bitcoin thing would be really cool as a hedge against our future technologies and our present technologies somehow being deprecated by state actors. Actually, I should mention all the things that we can't think of instead of trying to list the things that we can. Yeah. So I wanted to bring that up as my last thing.
Yeah, I like that old school insurance policy there, like bringing it down to old technology to insure against future threats. I like that. All right,
yeah,
Leo.
it's a hardening.
Yes, indeed. We got 5 minutes here, Leo. The floor is yours.
I very much want to have a separate conversation sometime with David about, like, Bitcoin being an organism. This is also something that very much fascinates me. I think Bitcoin as an organism makes a lot more sense than, like, Bitcoin as a network. For us to be unable, and, like, we're not even the people who created Bitcoin, right, have any idea of how to shut it off. Like, it's something that you kind of birth, that you kind of, like, give life, and then it runs away and does its own thing. And I feel a lot of the time when we interact with Bitcoin, it's more Bitcoin incentivizing us to do something than us, like, really us controlling Bitcoin. For us to run mining operations, that's like Bitcoin telling us, like, hey, like, give me energy and I will give you value in exchange. That's not so much us saying like, I'm going to turn on Bitcoin by like running these hashes. For things like UASF, right? It's kind of Bitcoin telling us like, hey, like, fight for me, like, keep me together, keep me in one chain. I find that very beautiful. So yeah, just a few ideas. Very much want to continue that conversation sometime.
Absolutely,
Other than that,
man.
all I have to say is Guang Fok Hong Kong, Si Doi Gap Meng, reclaim Hong Kong, revolution of our times. Thank you for paying attention to what's happening in Hong Kong. It is very much a fight that's not only relevant to Hong Kong, but relevant to the entire world. And if we don't fight it now, we're going to have to fight it in 1,000 different places around the world, because the Chinese Communist Party is not going to stop at Hong Kong, but they are going to continue their expansionist plans around. Taiwan is next,
Yep.
Australia, the United States, campuses around the world, and governments everywhere are going. It's coming to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Hey, David, you got to have him on your show, man. So speaking about David's show, it is linked to below. He's got a great podcast. We'll link to the Hong Kong meet. We'll link to everybody's pertinent links. Will be linked to below. Remember, This Week in Bitcoin is every Friday here. I do a new show on my channel every day. Saturdays Beyond Bitcoin. Every other day is the One Bitcoin Show. You know, we got the conviction. A new show here every single day. So thank you very much, guest. It's been a great one today. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, Disrupt Meister. Remember to subscribe to this channel, like this video, share this video, check out the links below. Of course, pound that like button. Shabbat Shalom. See you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.